The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This week, Prime Minister has lost control of our borders. He started by teaming up with the British Columbia NDP to decriminalize fentanyl. He has kept the fentanyl precursor, 80% of fentanyl precursor ingredients legal. He allows 99% of shipping containers to come into our country uninspected. And he passed C5, which gives house arrest to the kingpins who produce this poison. Will he reverse his radical liberalization of drugs so that not one more mother will have the heartbreak of losing a child to overdoses?
The Prime Minister, who is weak, lost control of immigration, has lost control of the borders, and lost control of spending, inflation, debt, and even his own ministers, according to the Globe and Mail. Tension is rising between the PM and the Minister of Finance on the tax cut, and it's compromising his commitment to keep the deficit to $40 billion, as the Minister of Finance promised. Why is he pushing his finance minister to break her promise on this inflationary deficit? The Right Honourable Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader likes to dramatize things to distract Canadians from the fact that he voted against a tax break for Canadians. He voted against dental care, which has now reached 1.2 million Canadians. He voted against investment in school food programs, and he continues to try to muzzle his members to prevent them from talking in the interest of their communities, and he refuses to obtain his security clearance to be able to protect our democracy. That's how he wants to distract Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition, the Prime Minister, is the one who's trying to muzzle his own Minister of Finance. She made a promise to limit the deficit to $40 billion, to avoid further inflation, which is costing Canadians so much that they can't feed their children. And now he has forced his minister to break her promise. And he's attacking her in the papers. Why is the Prime Minister forcing his minister to break her promise and her credibility? The Right Honourable Prime Minister, as we've just seen, why the Conservative leader keeps on playing these dramatic games. It's because inflation is now at the level that is expected by the Bank of Canada, which has led to a cut in the key rate of 0.5 percentage points. And we are here to help Canadians. We have kept inflation down, but what they have done, they have voted against the school food program to help young people across our country, and he is blocking access to dental care. He is not here to help Canadians.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
This week, Prime Minister has lost control of the borders, lost control of immigration, lost control of spending, debt, and inflation. Now he's lost control of his own cabinet. Yesterday, the Globe and Mail reported that there's a big fiscal feud that has broken out between the Prime Minister and his Finance Minister. At stake is that she wanted to run a gigantic $40 billion deficit, but that was her guardrail. And now this Prime Minister is pushing her through that guardrail and pushing all Canadians off the fiscal cliff. Why?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Conservative leader likes to make up little dramas to try and distract Canadians from the fact that he voted against a tax break for all Canadians. He's trying to hide from the fact that he continues to muzzle his own MPs so they cannot be their community's voices in Ottawa, instead being his voice in forcing them to face billions of dollars in cuts to housing programs. He continues to refuse to get his security clearance because he doesn't want to keep his own MPs safe from foreign interference. That's why he's trying to distract Canadians from what's going on.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Muzzling, Mr. Speaker. his Liberal MPs are not speaking out against him because he's allowing so much liberty. It's because he's so weak.
Right.
And there's nothing worse than a weak bully. He's now cracking down on his own finance minister, some feminist. On this side of this House, I lead by inspiration while he leads by intimidation. Once again, why won't he follow my inspiration and stand up for the promise that he made to keep the deficit under $40 billion?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Once again, Mr. Speaker, we see very clearly for the Leader of the Opposition, it's all about him. Well, for us, Mr. Speaker, it's all about Canadians. It's all about giving Canadians a tax break over the next 2 months that the Conservative leader voted against. Right. It's about delivering dental care to 1.2 million Canadians, where 3 million Canadians are already approved to access dental care in the coming year. The fact is, Mr. Speaker, we continue to be there for Canadians. He continues to be there for himself to try and block the help we're delivering to Canadians to make sure everyone thinks everything is broken because he's busy breaking it.
Order. Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He's been Prime Minister for 9 years. Let's review the chronology. So, not even 8 months ago, his minister said the deficit would not exceed $40 billion, the guardrail. Then, he went and got his banker friend, Carbon Tax Carney, to become his top economic advisor, stripping the power away from his finance minister. And suddenly, the guardrail was broken. Is he really going to subject his finance minister to the humiliation of reading Carney's fiscal update, which busts through the guardrail?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, this morning the Bank of Canada announced interest rates are going down yet again. That is terrible news for the Leader of the Opposition, but it's great news for Canadians for whom things will become more affordable. On top of that, a tax break out for Canadians over the next 2 months that the Leader of the Opposition voted against. Why, Mr. Speaker? Because he cares more about his own political interests than he does about Canadians who are struggling. Oh, he'll talk about the challenges Canadians are facing to try and instrumentalize them for his own gain, but he won't lift a finger to help Canadians.
Then I have
The Honourable Member for Bell-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, the Parliamentary Committee of Justice tabled a report that is literally a trial against Quebec's values, because Quebec is attached to, like most Western countries, to the notion of separating church and state. And I'm wondering what the Prime Minister, to the thousands of Muslims in Quebec who are happy and welcome in their society that has welcomed them. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, on this side of the House, we have always defended and will always defend the freedom of ideas, freedom of expression, freedom of beliefs. This is a fundamental value for all Canadians and all those who come to Canada. And this is why on this side of the House, we'll always defend individual rights and the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. This is clear, Mr. Speaker.
Then I have
The Honourable Member for Bell-Chambly. I'd like to make things a little bit more concrete, Mr. Speaker. Is the Prime Minister backing people who at schools, secular schools in Quebec, are imposing their religion? Is he backing those who are literally bullied because they want to respect the principle of secularism in Quebec schools? It's one or the other. Which one? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, very clearly, we will always defend the freedom of religion, freedom of expression, which are fundamental values for all Canadians and Quebecers. And that is why we're moving forward to defend the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. At the same time, Mr. Speaker, whether it's at independent universities or elsewhere, every institution has the responsibility of hiring the best possible professors and teachers based on merit, and that's what all Quebecers and Canadians expect.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Donald Trump is a bully, and bullies prey on weakness. When Trump says jump, the Prime Minister says how high. And when Trump trash talks Canada, the leader of the Conservatives repeats that garbage. And when Trump trolls Canada, hundreds and thousands of Canadians worry that they might lose their job. Why won't the Prime Minister fight back and protect Canadian jobs?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the job of a Canadian Prime Minister is to stand up for Canadian jobs, for Canadian workers, the Canadian economy. That is exactly what we are doing with a level of serious and a level of focus and, quite frankly, a Team Canada approach that brings together, the Premiers brings together different actors from unions, from businesses, from expertise across the country. That is why we will continue to take this seriously, not freak out like the NDP or repeat the attacks like the Conservatives. We will stand up for Canadians like we have before, as we will again.
The honourable member for Burnaby South.
Either, Mr. Speaker.
The Prime Minister is doing nothing while Trump mocks our country. Order, please.
The
honourable member for Burnaby South. From the beginning, please.
Isn't safe either.
The Prime Minister is doing nothing while Trump mocks our country, and doing nothing while Trump threatens good Canadian jobs. I've fought bullies all my life. You have to be strong and not play their game. When will the Prime Minister stop showing weakness? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, a few years ago, during the first Trump administration, when there were tariffs imposed on steel and aluminum workers across the country, we responded reasonably but firmly, and we saw these tariffs removed. We were able to renegotiate NAFTA by protecting not only supply management, but also things like cultural exemptions and the continuity of our trade between our two countries. We did so by taking challenges seriously, but we worked responsibly, and that's what we'll do once again.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Quote, Finance Minister, 2022. This is a line we shall not cross. Then she listed 3 lines. 1, that the deficit would only go down. It went up. 2, that she would pay off the COVID debt. Not only has she not paid off a penny, the debt has gone up. And 3, that the debt to GDP ratio would only drop, and it has risen. Did the Finance Minister voluntarily cross her own lines, or did the Prime Minister push her?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition is once again putting on his little dramatic acts because he is trying to distract Canadians from the core facts. Interest rates are down again. Canadians will be getting a tax break over the next 2 months, despite the best efforts of the Conservative leader, who once again, twice this past week, saw that this House has no confidence in him. And third, 3 million Canadians are now approved for access to dental care for the coming year. These are things that he stood against, but Canadians are getting anyway.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister is silencing his own finance minister. She was already wildly irresponsible with the public purse, but not irresponsible enough for him. She wanted to keep the deficit at a already massive $40 billion. He said it's not enough. Canadians are not paying enough inflation, according to him. So once again, did she voluntarily smash through her fiscal guardrail, or did he push her?
Yeah.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the Leader of the Opposition puts on these little performances because he wants to try and distract Canadians from the facts. We have the lowest deficit amongst G7 countries and will continue to. We are the third largest receiver in the world of foreign direct investment, #1 per capita in the G20, because countries around the world and companies around the world have confidence not just in Canada but in Canadians. The question that people should ask is, why doesn't the Leader of the Opposition have confidence in Canada or confidence in Canadians?
I know it's Wednesday and colleagues are very enthusiastic to participate, but I'd invite them not to take the floor unless recognized by the Speaker. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Canadians do not have confidence in him, nor does his own party or his own cabinet, nor apparently does the Bank of Canada, which today was forced into an emergency panicked rate cut to confront the collapsing economy. The governor of the bank said the economy is softer than he expected it would be, and despite the fact that inflation is rising, that all 4 measures of it are above the target, he's being forced to cut the rates to save the economy from outright collapse. When will the Prime Minister stop breaking the economy and call a carbon tax election so we can fix it?
Again, I'm going to ask members not to take the floor unless recognized by the Chair. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
This is completely illogical.
Say that in English. The reality is, Mr. Speaker, he's just making this stuff up in a way you couldn't believe. Inflation has been within the target range of the Bank of Canada for over 10 months now. This is because we have been there to help Canadians with things like dental care, like a school food program, with investments that are growing the economy in a way that has brought down inflation and allowed the Bank of Canada to cut rates faster than just about any other G7 country. We are there for Canadians. He's the one voting against things.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
You know what's up? Inflation's up. Yep. Unemployment is up. Inflation is up. It's not only up, every single measure of inflation is now above its target. Unemployment is up. It's at 10% in Toronto now.
Order. I didn't hear any of it, Greg. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Please start again.
You know what's up? Inflation's up. All 4 measures of inflation are now above target. Unemployment's up. In Toronto, it's over 10%. You know what else is up? Housing costs. They've actually doubled. They've risen more than in any other country in the G7. You know what else is up? Food bank use is up. It too has doubled, with 2 million people lined up at the food bank. And you know what else is up again? The promise-breaking inflationary deficit. So why doesn't he tell us, if he's figured out how to count, what the deficit will be this year?
Right. Yeah. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, one has to take a moment to appreciate how difficult it must be to be the Leader of the Opposition at a time when things are getting better for Canadians. He spends all his time, and has for the past... That's enough.
I'm going to ask members, please, in particular the members from Portage, Lisgar, as well as from Abbotsford, not to take the floor unless recognized by the Speaker. I'm going to invite the Right Honourable Prime Minister to start again.
Mr. Speaker, the challenges faced by the Leader of the Opposition is that he spent so long long explaining to Canadians that everything is broken, that when things start to get better, he refuses to actually help Canadians. He's voted against a tax break for Canadians over the next few months. He's voted against the dental care that's helped already well over 1 million Canadians. He is stuck in a place where, as Canadians are starting to come through the difficult times the global economy has put them in, he needs to continue to talk down Canadians, talk down our economy, and scare people into voting for him. It won't work.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Bloc voted once again for $21 billion in federal spending from the centralizing government. In total, $500 billion inflationary, centralizing, liberal spending, more power for the government here in Ottawa, less money in the pockets of Quebecers. What did the Prime Minister offer the Bloc leader to convince him to support these big deficits, bureaucracy, and inflation that the federal government is imposing? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. His question, the question that all Quebecers and Canadians should ask is why, on the contrary, is the Conservative Party voting against funds for affordable housing. They voted against military aid for Ukraine. They voted against funding for auto theft fights in Canada, against support to victims of hate crime, against dental care. They voted against the National Food Program for schools. The question isn't why parliamentarians supported this. It's why the Conservative leader stands up against Canadians. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition. Because money is never going to do what he's saying. They're just increasing bureaucracy in Ottawa like they always do. But the Bloc leader says he needs to support the government spending by voting for these appropriations. Otherwise, everything will just shut down like it does in the U.S. But we're not the U.S. If appropriation isn't approved, the government doesn't close. There's an election. It gives people a choice. Will the Prime Minister pay for classes on how the parliamentary system works for the Bloc leader? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, we're starting to get used to this disdain from the Conservative leader against the government, members of the government. But now the fact he's starting to disdain other members of this parliament, other leaders, shows truly his approach, which is truly not worthy of this place or the responsibility that we all have to defend the interests of Canadians. But he cannot explain why he voted against a tax break for Canadians. He can't explain why he voted against dental care for seniors. So he decides to attack and to insult people. Canadians deserve better, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Mr. Speaker, superior education, higher education institutions, are they free, as the Prime Minister says? That's a good question. But what we do know, however, is that education is provincial jurisdiction, and it's up to Quebec to decide what happens in Quebec schools. So I'd like to know, just like the previous question, is the Prime Minister supporting students and professors for sexual education in Quebec, and does he support, rather, those who insult them and use fear for religious reasons? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, regardless of the various jurisdictions across the country, which we do respect, the federal government has the responsibility to ensure that all Canadians are protected by the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, whether it's freedom of expression, freedom of ideas and beliefs. All of this has to be respected across our country. And obviously, we do respect the work that the provinces do to deliver their education systems, but we will always be here to defend these fundamental freedoms for everyone, particularly for vulnerable children. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. there are a few lessons encouraged for what we're seeing in this Parliament, but I'd like to remind everyone there is in the Criminal Code a disposition that allows people under a religious pretext to spread hate and to incite violence. Since we don't have courage to do anything else, well, can the Prime Minister end this religious exception and end the legitimacy of this hateful propaganda and this call to violence for religious reasons? The Right Honourable Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, spreading hate or encouraging violence is always illegal in Canada, and that's why we expect our police forces to be here to protect people and to ensure that the law is enforced. We'll always be here to protect and defend the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, as well as freedom of expression of religion and ideas in Canada. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
The Prime Minister and the entire Liberal caucus voted against taking the GST off new homes, which would have saved up to $50,000 for a young couple trying to buy a home, almost $3,000 a year in lower mortgage payments, and would have stimulated an extra 30,000 additional homes built. Even the Prime Minister's own housing advisor said that this was the best housing policy he's seen in a generation. Why does the Prime Minister insist on taxing young people who are struggling to pay the doubling housing costs that he's brought since he took office?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have long learned that whenever Conservatives make promises, you have to look at the small print. And what the Leader of the Opposition actually proposed was cutting billions of dollars worth of investments to municipalities across the country to create more density, to accelerate the construction of homes, and to cut bureaucracy and red tape. Indeed, members of the Conservative Party have been advocating to invest in their communities, to send money to their mayors. And the Leader of the Opposition wrote a letter in their name saying, no, none of them want those investments in housing. Shame on him, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he's again imagining things. His program does not build homes, it builds bureaucracy. The only density is in his head. Our policy was
I'm going to ask the Honourable, the Leader of the Opposition to withdraw that and to rephrase his question.
Thank you. It's in his imagination, that's all. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister wants to tax people up to $50,000 on buying a home so that he can give more money to the very bureaucrats that block home building. It's not that his housing funds don't help. It's worse. They actually block new home building with more bureaucrats. So why don't we follow my plan to slash the bureaucracy, axe the tax, and build the homes?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the problem with what the Conservative leader is saying, leaving aside the childish insults, is that his own MPs are going behind his back, pleading to the minister to please send investments to build more homes to their municipalities, are complaining behind his back to the CBC that they can't stand up for their communities. Mr. Speaker, MPs are supposed to be their communities' voices in this place, but he gives them a whap on the knuckles if ever they dare be anything but his voice in their communities.
Before the Honourable Member takes his seat, I'm going to ask the Honourable Member from Niagara Falls to please not take the floor when not recognized. The Honourable Member. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, yesterday the Bloc voted against cutting GST on the purchase of new homes. So I just want to understand, a so-called sovereignist party wants to take money out of young Quebecers' pockets who are buying homes, to give it to the most centralizing government in our history, the battled federal government. How come a sovereignist party wants to concentrate power and Quebecers' money here in Ottawa?
Cette question ne...
This question is not for the government's administration. So, and I see that the Right Honourable Prime Minister is rising to answer this question. But I would ask the Honourable Leader to take his seat. And I hope that this will not represent a trend. Otherwise, we will have to move on to other questions. The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, what the Bloc members understand and what Conservative members in Quebec also understand is that $1.8 billion that the federal government and the province are investing for the Housing Accelerator Fund helps to increase densification and increase housing construction while eliminating red tape. But the Conservative members in Quebec can't talk about this. They can't say how these cuts, $1.8 billion in cuts that the Conservative Party is proposing, how bad they'll be because they're afraid of their leader. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Speaker. We want to put up to $50,000 in the pockets of young Quebecers who are buying homes, after Liberal programs managed to double the cost of housing and have tripled rents in Montreal. The Bloc is voting to feed federal bureaucracy with the money of Quebecers. It's only the Conservative Party that is in favour of sovereignty for young Quebecers to be able to keep their own money in their own pockets. I see that the Right Honourable Prime Minister is rising. Mr. Speaker, $900 million has been invested by this, sent to Quebec rather, to create more homes, less bureaucracy, and accelerate housing construction and eliminate red tape. And this is money that the Conservative leader is proposing to take away from Quebec. And these young Quebecers who need to find affordable homes and who need to have opportunities won't see construction under a Conservative government because they want to cut in housing investment, and that is why people have voted.
The Honourable Member for Winnipeg Centre.
Mr. Speaker, the special interlocutor, the AFN, the Canadian Medical Association, and now the victims' ombudsperson are calling for legal mechanisms to end residential school denialism. But the Liberal Attorney General is missing in action when it comes to the rise of extremism against Indigenous people. He has failed to protect survivors and their families from violence. Inciting hate is not free speech. So will the Prime Minister heed these calls and adopt my bill C-413 to protect survivors, their families, from the incitement of hate?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we agree. Incitement to hatred, incitement to violence are not free speech. We need to make sure that the path of reconciliation that this country is on is walked on by everyone. And that's why we've stepped up significantly in our anti-racism strategy, why we continue to work with that member on her private member's bill, why we continue to move forward to make sure that everyone, despite all those who continue to attempt to deny residential schools, all those who believe in the better future for Canada, hold together and prevent denialism from happening.
The Honourable Member for Edmonton-Griesbach.
Mr. Speaker, it's the holidays. Winter is here and people are dying. At a time when people should be gathered around the table, under a warm roof, 4 Edmontonians have died on the streets. And last winter, over 100 people lost a limb due to frostbite. Liberals have let people in Edmonton down. They're either too weak or don't care to stand up to Conservative Premier Danielle Smith's cuts to Edmonton's social services. Why is this Prime Minister, just like the Conservatives, standing by while Edmontonians freeze? Bravo.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we put significant amounts of money forward for the provinces to tackle the issue of encampments, to tackle homelessness. We've made historic investments in increasing housing and decreasing homelessness. Provinces have been varied in their response to be willing to work with the federal government. That's why we're working directly with the City of Edmonton and Mayor Sohi on moving forward on supports to fight homelessness in Edmonton, as we are right across the country. It takes investment, it takes compassion, it takes partnership, and that's what we're doing.
That's right.
The honourable member for Northwest Territories.
Mr. Speaker, since 2015, our government has made reconciliation with Indigenous people one of the most crucial priorities for Canada. We have made important progress from returning unceded land back to communities, making aggressive investments into housing, reforming health care, and eliminating almost 150 long-term boil water advisories across the country. Can the Prime Minister tell Canadians what more we as a government can do to support reconciliation?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to begin by thanking the
Honourable
member
Leader
for the
of the
Northwest
Opposition.
Territories
This
for
week,
his
Prime
tireless
Minister has
advocacy
lost
and his
control of our
leadership.
borders.
We introduced the
started by
First Nations
teaming up
Clean
with the
Water
British
Act
Columbia NDP
to ensure
to
clean
decriminalize
drinking water
fentanyl.
for generations to come and give First Nations the tools to manage their own drinking water infrastructure. It was shameful that in the presence of chiefs gathered from across the country, the Conservative Party voted to refuse to send that bill to the Senate. They stood against us sending C-61 to the Senate. Shame on them. We need to solve drinking water for generations to come.
Heartbreak of losing a child to overdose.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the toxic drug epidemic has been hitting hard in communities right across this country and indeed across North America. That is why we have been stepping up in an evidence-based, compassion-based, public health-based approach to solving for the opioid epidemic and the toxic drug crisis. We're going to continue to lean on scientists and researchers and compassionate frontline workers as we invest to support Canadian families from coast to coast to coast. It is not more ideology proposed by the Leader of the Opposition that is going to solve this. It is the careful application of reasonable responses.
That's right.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
It is his weird, woke liberalization ideology that has caused the 47,000 deaths and the 200% increase in overdoses. But just like he has lost control of the drugs, he's lost control of immigration. Don't take my word for it. The Globe and Mail said, and I quote, the Liberal government lost control of Canada's immigration system, highlighting that there are now 30,000 people who have been ordered deported that the Prime Minister has now lost track of.
Like everything else.
What's his plan to find them and deport them?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, despite the Leader of the Opposition trying to pretend it's not true, Canada remains the best country in the world. And the fact that we are facing significant challenges like other places around the world doesn't take away from that. We will continue to roll up our sleeves. We will continue to defend Canada's interests, defend Canada's borders, work with our partners in the United States. The Leader of the Opposition can't help himself from talking down Canada and Canadians. We're going to work with Canadians, with provinces in a Team Canada approach and protect Canada's structures and systems.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
We have the best country with the worst Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker.
Yeah.
That's the fact. He's weak, woke, and wasteful, and he's lost track of 30,000 people who have been ordered deported but have now vanished. Now, we have millions of other people who are going to come up for exit when their permits and visas expire over the next year and a half. And the Prime Minister won't tell us what's the plan to get the people out of the country who are not supposed to be here.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians continue to have confidence in immigration as a good thing for our economy, good thing of our country, because they know we have a strong and rigorous immigration system that adjusts depending on the needs and the opportunities for Canada to grow and integrate more people. That is what we are continuing to defend. That is what we fight for every single day. While the Leader of the Opposition talks down Canada, talks down Canadians, and puts partisan attacks ahead of reasonable policy solutions, we're going to do the work necessary to protect Canadians and protect our immigration system.
That's great.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Encore une faible réponse.
Once again, a weak answer from a weak Prime Minister who has lost control of our immigration system. Three Chileans here illegally escaped from a center in Laval. These 3 fugitives can be added to 750 individuals who can be considered dangerous in Quebec, and that this government is unable to get out of the country. And we've learned that this government has literally lost track of 30,000 people under expulsion orders. What is the plan to get these people out of the country? The Right Honourable Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, over recent years, we have significantly invested in our border security services. We have invested in our police services. That's a real contrast with the Conservatives who fired 1,100 border agents when they were in power. They have made cuts to law enforcement. They have made cuts to the border. They have chosen to harm Canada's security and to instead promote dangerous weapons. And that is why we have put an end to the ability to purchase assault-style weapons. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, I perhaps have a strange question for the Prime Minister. The Conservative leader is taking advantage of his position to say whatever he wants about the Bloc Québécois, about me, about Quebec. And yet, with remarkable cowardice, for over a year, he has been refusing all of the invitations to public debate that I keep sending him. And today he has gone even farther. Is the Prime Minister not concerned about the fact that the Conservatives keep passionately pushing the Bloc Québécois to be even more sovereigntist than it is now? I see that the Right Honourable Prime Minister is rising. Yes, Mr. Speaker, I know very well that the Bloc Québécois, like other parliamentarians in this House, doesn't take anything the Conservative leader doesn't take anything he says very seriously. And in fact, very few Quebecers take anything that the Conservative leader says very seriously, because he is against women's rights. He wants to re-legalize assault-style weapons. He wants to eliminate the dental program that has already helped hundreds of thousands of Quebecers. We will be there to invest. We will work with our colleagues from the Bloc Québécois and the NDP to help people. But the Conservatives just want to start fights. The Honourable Member for Belleuil-Chambly. Well, Mr. Speaker, something that is happening now is that a parliamentary committee of the House of Commons is attacking Quebec. The Conservatives seem to have trouble coming up with any new questions. Same thing for the answers. It's like a broken record. We're not facing the challenges that we should be dealing with in this Parliament. Is it not time to wish each other a happy holidays and say that when we see each other again, it will be because there's an election? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît. Le très honorable Premier Ministre.
Monsieur le Président.
Mr. Speaker, I am always very happy to wish anyone happy Christmas. But we still have work to do, Mr. Speaker. We have a fall economic statement to present that will deliver help for Quebecers and Canadians. We will invest in our future at a time when we are facing challenges with the Americans. We have work to do in the spring, in the next parliamentary session, to add people to the list of those eligible for dental care. We will be there to offer free medication and free insulin for those who need it. We will be doing the work that we need to do.
Le chef de l'opposition.
Oui, alors.
The honorable leader of the opposition. Yes, it's time for a debate. It's time for an election, Mr. Speaker. Just yesterday, the Bloc Québécois repeatedly voted against an election and voted for keeping this government in power. The leader of the Bloc Québécois will have to face the fact that the Conservatives want to cut the GST on new housing, but the Liberals want to do the opposite. The Bloc Québécois wants to increase the bureaucracy. The Bloc Québécois wants to make the bureaucracy bigger. We would get rid of it. This is the kind of choice that Quebecers are facing. Once again, we're hearing questions coming from all parties that have nothing to do with the federal administration, but I see the Prime Minister is rising. Well, Mr. Speaker, yesterday we voted for all sorts of things. For example, the Holocaust commemoration program, the Canada Housing Benefit, and all sorts of other things. But the Conservatives voted against that. We voted for emergency funding for veterans. We voted for the National Child Protection Strategy to protect them from online harms. But the Conservatives voted against that. Yes, I recognize that parliamentarians from other parties voted in favor of all those good things. But the Conservatives are constantly voting against what is actually going to help Canadians. The honorable leader of the opposition.
Minister who's lost control of spending, debt, and inflation. Workers are now forced to fight to make up lost wages. That's why last year Canada had more strikes than any year since 1981. That is since the last Trudeau was breaking the country and its economy. Now, Mr. Speaker, Canadians are suffering because they can't get their donations to charities, small businesses can't get their payments, and the economy is losing millions. Will he sit down the two sides, get a deal, and put an end to this dreadful strike?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Unlike the Conservative Party, whose attacks on unions are well documented from 575 and 377, their anti-union bills that the Leader of the Opposition voted for, from continually choosing to use back-to-work legislation, as they did time and time again, we believe that the best deals happen at the bargaining table, which is why the Minister has got the two sides of Canada Post together to try and find a solution that will work. Mr. Speaker, we know small businesses are hurting, Canadians in rural and remote areas are hurting. We will continue to look to help them, and we get this resolved the right way.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Il est faible. Il a perdu le...
He's weak. He has lost control of spending. He has lost control of the debt and of inflation, which means that workers need to fight for a pay rise. And last year, we saw the highest number of strikes since 1981. Which was when his father broke the economy. And now there's a strike at Canada Post, which is hurting our economy, small businesses, nonprofits. When will the Prime Minister get both sides of the table to put an end to the strike? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, the Conservative Party's hostility to workers, towards unions, is well documented. I don't need to say anything more about it. But what we will do is ensure that the best possible agreements are brought to the negotiation table, and that's why we encourage all parties to continue to negotiate, because we know everyone is struggling. Non-profits are struggling. Canadians in remote and rural areas are struggling. They depend on Canada Post, and that is why we need solutions, and we are working on that.
Honourable député de Saint-Laurent.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Laurent. Mr. Speaker, last week was the 35th anniversary of the École Polytechnique massacre. Quebecers and Canadians from throughout the country mourned the 14 women who were murdered due to a sadistic act of gender-based violence. Over the last few years, there have also been horrendous tragedies due to mass shootings in places like Port-au-Pic, Truro, and Quebec City. Can the Prime Minister tell us about the government's measures to protect Canadians from gun violence? The Right Honourable Prime Minister. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for Saint Laurent for her question and her hard work. Unlike the Leader of the Conservatives, we will always prioritize the safety of Canadians, not the gun lobby. Thanks to our gun buyback program, we will be removing assault-style weapons from our communities. We will always denounce violence against women, and we will take action on things like red flag laws and other measures against gender-based violence. We will always stand up to defend women and fight domestic violence, whereas the Conservatives stand for more weapons.
Well, let's see what the police have to say about that after a 116% increase in gun crime under this Prime Minister. And a repeat violent offender out on early parole allegedly murdered a 34-year-old woman in Toronto on Sunday. The Toronto police had this question, and I quote, "For the Prime Minister, how was this person, with their history, allowed to access a firearm and be alone with a partner when they were supposedly living in a supervised community setting? What answers are you providing to the victim's family or our communities who continue to see the heartbreaking results of your weak policies on crime?" End quote.
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, despite Conservative opposition, we continue to move forward on bringing in red flag laws and yellow flag laws to make sure that people who are charged with domestic violence don't have access to firearms. Conservatives stood against that and fought against that every step of the way. Just like they're working hard to make legal again assault-style weapons that we rendered illegal in this country 4 years ago. They want to unfreeze the handgun bans, and last time they were in office, they cut 1,100 workers from CBSA to help, who were there to prevent illegal guns flowing in from the United States.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
He has not banned a single gun. He's spent over $60 million to fail to take a single gun off the road. He's had to give it an amnesty to reverse all of the announced gun bans that he did, standing in front of a cartoon image of a scary Hollywood-style gun. And what has been the sum total of all of this? A 116% increase in gun violence since he became Prime Minister. When will he realize that banning Grandpa Joe's hunting rifle is not going to stop crime, that instead we actually have to lock up the criminals?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Speaker, instead of trying to scare Grandpa Joe, he should be honest with Grandpa Joe in that we have banned assault-style weapons, and already we've seen thousands of assault-style weapons collected and destroyed. These are things that we are doing that the Conservative Party and its funders, the gun lobby, continue to stand against. They will re-legalize assault-style weapons in this country, unfreeze the market on handguns. That's what they promised the gun lobby, and they hide behind Grandpa Joe because they can't admit it out loud.
Order. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, he admitted he doesn't even know what an assault rifle is, let alone able to ban one. He spent $60 million, and his government admits they didn't take a single firearm off the road. There's been a 116% increase in gun violence under his leadership, and 99% of the shipping containers that come in are not inspected at all, even though the previous Conservative government increased the number of frontline border officers. Why is it that the Prime Minister is so busy trying to protect turkeys from hunters that he doesn't protect Canadians from criminals?
Order. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, not only has this House defined what an assault-style weapon is in law, the RCMP are now acting on that classification.
I'm certain all members can exercise restraint here. I'm inviting all members, please, to do so. The Right Honourable Prime Minister from the top, please.
Mr. Speaker, not only has this House defined what an assault-style weapon was over the objections of Conservatives, but we are now removing those guns and destroying those guns while we compensate those who lawfully purchased them. That is what responsible gun control looks like. Unfortunately, the leader of the Conservative Party has promised the gun lobby that he will re-legalize assault-style weapons, reopen the frozen market for handguns, and make things more dangerous for Canadians and particularly for women right across the country. Shame on him!
Order. The Honourable Member for Halifax West.
Mr. Speaker, Canadians have been through a lot in the last few years, and they're looking at all levels of government for relief and support. That's something I hear at the doors in Halifax West, and it's the call that I bring every day to Ottawa when I represent my constituents. Unlike the Conservatives who've been forbidden to advocate for their communities. Can the Prime Minister give an update on what this Liberal government is doing to make life better for Canadians?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for Halifax West for her advocacy and her hard work. There was good news this morning, Mr. Speaker. The Bank of Canada has cut its interest rate by another 50 points. And today, we announced that 3 million Canadians have been approved for dental care, with more than 1.2 million Canadians, mostly seniors, already having received care. But the good news doesn't stop there. On Saturday, a tax break will go into effect for all Canadians, Mr. Speaker. The Conservatives voted against it, but it's real. Canadians are going into Christmas and the holiday season with lower interest rates, lower taxes, and more money in their pockets.
The Honourable Member for Courtenay Alberni.
Mr. Speaker, forest biomass energy production has the potential to provide Canadian electrical grids with a sustainable source of energy. This will also create high-paying jobs for rural communities like the paper mill in Port Alberni. The U.S. Inflation Reduction Act includes tax incentives for biomass, putting Canada's forest sector at a competitive disadvantage. The Liberals promised a clean technology and electricity investment tax credit in 2023, but failed to deliver. Will the Prime Minister finally commit to the timely passage of these tax incentives to help protect Canadian jobs in the forest sector?
The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, biomass is an important part of the solution as we move forward into being more reliant on renewable energy and understanding how important our forestry industry is, not just for creating good jobs and goods to export and build homes with, but also contributing to our energy opportunities and challenges. We will continue to stand up for innovation in our energy industry. We will continue to stand up for energy workers right across the country in all industries as we work to decarbonize, as we work to invest and innovate, and as we create a better future for all Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Saanich Gulf Islands.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Monday we'll find out the extent of Canada's deficit. The Greens offer some solutions. Offset deficits by taxing with the excess profits of big oil, big banks, and tax the billionaire class. Why will this government not make them pay their fair share?
Let's go.
Order. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, following the pandemic, we actually brought in an excess profit tax on big banks and insurance companies that were very profitable through a very difficult time for Canadians, and those measures continue. We will always look at making sure everyone pays their fair share, and in regards to oil and gas companies that are creating incredible profits by selling oil and gas to Canadians, we're actually making sure that there is a limit to how much they can pollute, because no industry industry should have unlimited pollution. They can continue to produce, but they need to reduce their emissions. They need to invest in new ways of supporting their workers and supporting our future.
Colleagues, I would like to draw the members' attention to the presence in the gallery of our former colleague and former Leader of the Opposition, Mr. Gilles Duceppe.
I see that there are a number of points of order. Je vois qu'il y a...
I see there are a number points of order.
Leader of the government in the House of Commons.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, there have been discussions amongst the parties, and if you seek it, I believe you will find unanimous consent for the following motion.
I'm going to ask all members, please, to listen carefully, because I know that the whips of the respective parties are trying to listen to this question. The Honourable Government House Leader, she wants to begin again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There have been discussions amongst the parties, and if you seek it, I believe you will find unanimous consent for the following motion. That notwithstanding any standing order, special order, or usual practice of the House, at 4 p.m. on Monday, December 16, 2024, the Speaker shall interrupt the proceedings to permit the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Finance to make a statement followed by a period of up to 10 minutes for questions and comments. After the statement, a member from each recognized opposition party and a member of the Green Party may reply for a period approximately equivalent to the time taken by the minister's statement, and each statement shall be followed by a period of 10 minutes for questions and comments. Thank you.
All those opposed to the Honourable Minister moving the motion will please say nay.
Keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Let the doors be open, que l'on ouvre les portes. Merci. Statements by members, déclaration de députés. The Honourable Member from West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to honor a remarkable individual, Barry Janik. Barry served 4 terms as mayor of the town of Gibsons from 1999 to 2011. Known for his smile, humor, and infectious spirit, he was beloved by those that had the pleasure of knowing him. He was a pioneer in advancing smart growth for Gibsons. He spearheaded the development of parks throughout the town, supported the creation of tetrahedral Provincial Park, and got Gibsons drinking water recognized as the best in the world. A skilled pilot, an environmental advocate that got stuff done, and devoted father, Barry's impact was far-reaching. And his story is part of the fabric of Gibsons, from being an extra in Beachcombers to his work engaging and leading the community. Barry's legacy lives on in every park, every initiative, and in the hearts of all who had the privilege of knowing him. And our thoughts are with his loving wife, Jane, his 3 kids, Colby, Roan, and Garnet, his many friends, and the entire community of Gibsons in this difficult time. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Lakeland.
After 9 years, Canadians pay the price for the NDP Liberals' economic vandalism. Their carbon tax and job-killing oil and gas cap hurt rural people and nonprofits the most. The Dewberry Agricultural Society paid over $5,000 in carbon taxes in just 6 months and can't afford to heat their hockey rink much longer. The NDP Liberals said small business owners are tax cheats. Well, their reckless capital gains tax hike and shameless temporary 2-month tax trick approve it. Cheryl, an accountant from Vegreville, says the tax hike will slash nearly 10% of savings when owners sell their life's work and labor of love that they rely on for their retirement. Ron from Glendon says the cost to switch his store's items to GST exempt and back could cripple his business at the most important time of year. Canada's promise is that anyone from anywhere can work hard for a powerful paycheck and pension and live in safe and healthy communities, but the NDP Liberals broke it. Common sense Conservatives will restore it, axe the tax, spike the hike, and turn hurt into hope for all.
The honourable member for Vaughan Woodbridge.
Mr. Speaker, this Christmas season, our Catholic community here in Canada and around the world was blessed to begin this period of prayer and preparation for the arrival of Jesus Christ at the heart of St. Peter's Basilica, when Pope Francis inducted 21 new members into the College of Cardinals. Among them, one of our very own, His Eminence Frank Cardinal Leo of the Archdiocese of Toronto. A proud moment for Canadian Catholics and our proud Italian-Canadian community. Born in Montreal to immigrant Italian parents, Cardinal Leo now is one of the youngest cardinals serving the Holy Mother Church and shepherding Christ's flock courageously. As he witnessed the Church in today's world, Cardinal Leo finds strength in prayer and anticipates that the Lord wants to pour generously into our hearts many graces. May this sacred moment inspire us to live with renewed purpose and generosity throughout the Christmas season and upcoming 2025 Jubilee declared by Pope Francis. I send my congratulations to Cardinal Leo and our entire Catholic community. Mr. Speaker, Buon Natale, Merry Christmas to everyone.
The Honourable Member for Drummond. Offspring of modest French-Canadian families, working class or middle class. With these words, a small group of artists began an artistic and social revolution in 1948, laying the foundations for what would become modern Quebec. The text, Refus Global, is perhaps one of the most fundamental to understanding today's Quebec. Signed by Paul-Émile Bourgeois and co-signed by the Automatist Group, it calls for an end to fear, freedom from the oppression of religion, and the pursuit in joy of our wild need for liberation. Under Bourgeois' name was signed the name of Madeleine Arbour, who has just left us at the venerable age of 101. An extraordinary painter, a genius of visual art and design, a set designer, notably for Giuseppe, and a teacher, Madeleine Arbour contributed all her life to making Quebec a more beautiful and humane place. She was one of the last surviving signatories of Refus Global. What we owe to these women and men is immeasurable. Builders of identity, liberators of people, founders of today's Quebec. To this great woman, our nation is grateful.
L'honorable député de Pierrefonds.
The Honourable Member for Pierrefonds-Dollard.
Monsieur le Président, on Sunday I was speaking with Miles, a resident in my beautiful riding of Pierrefonds-Dollard. Miles is a young man of 33. He works in transport, and he's also super fit and is training for the Highland Games. Miles and I were talking about how our Liberal government is making life more affordable, how people have been lifted out of poverty. And Miles says he actually sees it. He sees it as a neighborhood. He sees how our Liberal policies are making an impact to put a dent into poverty. And Mr. Speaker, this is proved by the numbers. En 2015,
in 2015, when the Conservatives left power, many Quebecers were in a situation of poverty, and today the rate has gone down from 15% to just 6%.
Care, the child benefit, keeping the age of retirement at 65. These are Liberals' policies. We are working for Miles and all Canadians. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Taylor and Melody from my riding are national champion sports shooters who compete internationally. They're supposed to represent Team Canada on the world stage in Czechia. They put years of hard work into training and competing, but this latest Liberal NDP gun grab has put their training and competition in jeopardy. Liberals are weak on crime, yet sports shooters, hunters, farmers, and First Nations across Canada are punished for this incompetence. After 9 years, gun crime has skyrocketed 116% across Canada. This weak Prime Minister's catch and release bail policy lets violent repeat offenders out on the street. Instead of this Liberal NDP government's ridiculous gun grab, they need to step back, so that a common-sense Conservative government can restore law and order, secure the border, and ensure repeat offenders get jail and not bail. We will respect the traditions and livelihoods of our hunters, farmers, First Nations, and sports shooters, and bring home safe communities once again.
The honourable member for Winnipeg South Centre.
Mr. Speaker, my riding of Winnipeg South Centre is home to thousands of older adults. Upon being elected, one of my first steps was to establish an Older Adults Advisory Council. Comprised of nearly a dozen constituents over the age of 65, we meet regularly to discuss issues that are pertinent to them. One of the topics that we have visited on several occasions is the heartbreaking damage caused to individuals and families as a result of dementia. Tragically, many Winnipeggers, including Earl Moberg, have gone missing or been put in harm's way because of this awful condition. Fortunately, Earl and his family have had many champions, like my constituent Ashley Mitchell, who is working hard to draw awareness to this important cause. The Alzheimer's Society of Manitoba, alongside other organizations and individuals like Ashley, continue to serve as wonderful advocates and resources. I rise today, Mr. Speaker, in honor of their work to draw attention to this plight facing tens of thousands of Canadians across the country, and to encourage all of us to elevate the conversation so that together we can support families, individuals, and our communities alike in the face of these challenges. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Parry Sound Muskoka.
Mr. Speaker, all across Canada, government charges account for more than 30% of the cost of a new home. These taxes block home building and drive up prices for all Canadians. Conservatives offered a plan right here in this House to axe the federal sales tax on new homes under $1 million. This would have saved Canadians up to $50,000 on the price of a new home and would ignite the construction of more than 30,000 new units every single year. The Liberal government's own top housing official confirmed at committee yesterday that this policy would, and I quote, inspire more home building if we can reduce the cost of home building. But the Liberals in the Bloc, of course, they voted against it. While this weak Prime Minister continues to borrow money to buy support of the bureaucracy-building mayors, common-sense Conservatives will fight to axe the federal sales tax on new homes under $1 million, saving Canadians thousands of dollars. Let's bring it home.
The honourable member for Fredericton.
Mr. Speaker, now more than ever, the Canadian Armed Forces need women. Not only do we need to recruit more talented, dedicated women to serve our country, but we need to retain those we already have. Unfortunately, thousands of CAF members experience sexual assault in the military each year, and women are at the highest risk. 80% of sexual assaults in our military go unreported because the survivors do not believe speaking up will make a difference. We must call out the underlying rape culture and act urgently to change it. Bill C-66 introduces changes to the National Defence Act and places investigations of sexual misconduct outside the chain of command and into the public system. It's a start, but it's not enough. Survivors have felt invisible for far too long. I will keep fighting for their voices to be heard. I'll end with an excerpt of a poem written by my constituent, a survivor and a veteran, describing her experience of living with this trauma. It was only one night. Move on, let it go. Forgive and heal is what you say, but for me it has been 10,220 days. 10,220 days of losing my career, my ability to hold a job, my health, my self-esteem, my hope. 10,220 days stolen. But yes, you're right. It was only one night. This has to stop, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for St. Albert, Edmonton.
Mr. Speaker, yet again, the leader of the NDP has sold out Canadians who are being pummeled by the economic vandalism of this Prime Minister. The leader of the NDP said that the Liberals are too weak, too selfish, and too beholden to corporate interests. Turns out his words mean absolutely nothing, because this week the NDP had an opportunity to support a Conservative motion of non-confidence that incorporated those very words. But they didn't. Why? Because the leader of the NDP selfishly wants his $2.3 million pension. After claiming to have ripped up his coalition agreement with the Prime Minister, the leader of the NDP has taped it back together under new terms, whereby the leader of the NDP gets his pension, the Prime Minister gets his power, and Canadians get the bill. It's time for a carbon tax election.
The honourable member for Louis Saint Laurent. Mr. Speaker, the housing crisis is affecting Canada from coast to coast to coast. That's why the Conservatives are proposing an effective, concrete and costed measure that will directly help Canadian families and to those who build housing. We want to eliminate the GST on new homes. In concrete terms, this measure will save Quebec homebuyers up to $50,000 or $2,500 a year in mortgage payments. Now, that's real help. It's effective. It will really help families. That's why the Corporation of Propriétaires Immobiliers du Québec said that the Conservative leader's proposal adds to the ideas that go in the right direction. But unfortunately, the leader of the Bloc Québécois and his MPs voted against this common sense proposal. That's the Liberal Bloc. Vote with the Liberal government and keep it in power. And yet, the head of CMHC told a House of Commons committee that our plan would certainly encourage more housing if we could reduce the cost of building housing. Despite this, the Bloc leader and the Liberals are against it. That's why we need to bring home a good Conservative government.
The Honourable Member for Yukon.
Mr. Speaker, Yukon University has officially become the 97th member of Universities Canada. Over the past 60 years, this progressive institution has grown from a vocational training centre to a college, and finally in 2020 is Canada's first university north of 60. Universities Canada is the voice of universities in this country. Yukon U's membership enriches this voice with valuable Northern and Indigenous perspectives. This news is more than a recognition of academic excellence. It highlights the university's role in empowering Northern communities through innovative education and research driven by local priorities such as climate change and health. This achievement will open new doors for collaboration, reconciliation, and knowledge sharing, positioning Yukon University to better serve its students and community. Congratulations to President Brown, Chancellor Geddes, and all the dedicated staff and students at Yukon University. Here's to your continued success and to the unique impact you will make as a university in the years to come.
Bravo.
Congratulations.
For Vancouver Granville.
For the holidays, as always, I want to extend my heartfelt thanks to the residents of Vancouver Granville. We are all made better by your ideas, engagement, and solutions, and I am so grateful to serve you. The holidays are a time to take care of one another, and that's why the 2-month GST holiday that starts this Saturday will make the holidays a little bit brighter. Together, we are delivering on things that matter to most every Canadian. In Vancouver Granville, there are 4 institutions, the Hellenic Community of Vancouver, the Fringe Festival, the Maritime Museum, and the Planetarium, that will all receive change-making funding to expand and improve their services and buildings. As we head into the holidays, Mr. Speaker, let's be kind to one another, let's reach out to those in need, and be grateful for the fact that we live in the best country on earth. Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Kushali Mubarak.
Order, please. If I could ask colleagues to please take their conversations a little quietly so we can listen to the members' statements. The Honourable Member for Edmonton Strathcona.
Mr. Speaker, a recent report issued by Women's Shelters Canada has found that the crisis in affordable housing is impacting women's shelters across Canada and putting women's lives at risk. As the Executive Director of Women's Shelters Canada explained, quote, since there's no affordable housing, women are staying in shelters longer. New women can't come in if women already in shelter have nowhere to go. The lack of affordable housing is so acute that half of the women that are needing shelter are having to return to live with their abusers because they will become homeless. Access to affordable housing is a matter of life or death. Women's shelters are at capacity. There is nowhere to go. It doesn't have to be this way, Mr. Speaker. In Alberta, the Canada Housing Benefit for Survivors of Gender-Based Violence was announced in mid-April and ran out of funds in August. The federal government must step up and provide more funding to women's shelters, to the Housing Benefit Program, to build transitional housing, and to non-market and cooperative housing initiatives to create real options for women who are at risk. Thank you.
Order, please. À l'ordre, s'il vous plaît.
Order.
L'honorable député.
The Honourable Member for Laurentides-Labelle. Today, I rise to pay tribute to Amélie Duceppe. That family name might ring a bell, and that's probably because you're familiar with the Duceppe Theatre that she directs and its long tradition of excellence in Québécois drama. Amélie Duceppe was named CEO of the Year in the social economy category by the Les Affaires newspaper. After taking over the reins in 2018 from her Aunt Louise, Amélie Duceppe has transformed the theatre's administration through collaborative, agile, and creative teamwork. Under her leadership and that of artistic co-directors David Lorrain and Jean-Simon Traversy, the Duceppe Theatre's doors are opening to more and more new audiences who are discovering or rediscovering Québécois theatre. On behalf of the Bloc Québécois, congratulations, Amélie Duceppe, and thank you for your incredible work promoting this essential name in Québécois culture. Thank you. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse, Les Etchemins-Lévis. Great disappointment, Mr. Speaker. Once again, the Bloc Québécois saved the government yesterday. Since the Bloc leader has been in Ottawa, his party has voted for over $520 billion in Liberal spending. That's almost 200 votes in favour of this government. And for what? I ask you, a public service that has practically doubled in size, consulting firms hired again and again, while direct services get worse and worse. The Bloc, which claims to defend Quebec's interests, nevertheless supports spending that feeds an increasingly imposing and centralized federal government. How can they claim, hand on heart, to want Quebec independence, while they actively collaborate with the federal Liberals? That's not how you serve Quebec's interests. Quebecers deserve better than this Bloc Liberal coalition that turns its back on their hopes and on their pocketbooks. They deserve better, a conservative government. Order. Order. The Honourable Member for Lac Saint Louis.
Education is the key to an individual's success and to the progress of society, whether economic, social, scientific, or cultural. The quality of a student's educational experience is dependent upon the passion and creativity of their teachers. I would like to draw the attention of this House to Rosemary Hill, who teaches grade 7 English at Beaconsfield High School and who is a recipient of the 2024 Prime Minister's Award for Teaching Excellence. Through the use of literature, Ms. Hill turns her classroom into a doorway of discussion of global issues and community involvement. She challenges her students to find and tell stories from and about the world around them. And she shows them that language and literature are tools for communicating narratives essential to personal growth and collective progress. Thank you, Ms. Hill, for being an inspiration to both your students and your fellow educators, and for helping to build a better Canada.
Questions orales, oral questions, l'honorable chef de l'opposition.
The Honourable Leader of the Opposition.